Assalamualaikum and greetings to everyone here at Penang, whom I deeply respect. Today, I want to invite all of us to think about one simple but powerful question. What does education really mean? Usually, when we hear the word education, our minds go straight to school, like textbooks, teachers that standing in front of a classroom, and major exams like UPSR or SPM. But is that really there is? I once came across a quote that deeply inspired me. Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think by Albert Einstein. And I could not agree more because true education is not about how much we know, but how much that knowledge transforms who we are and how we live. If I were ask you now, who has made the greatest impact in your life? I'm sure many of you would answer my teacher. Because when we talk about education, we are really talking about life itself. Education doesn't begin in school. It begins with human curiosity. From the moment a child asks, "Why is the sky blue?" or "Why does the moon follow us?" That's where the seed of education begins to grow. And our role as educators, as parents, also as a community, is to make sure that curiosity never fades. Let me share a personal story that's very close to my heart. When I was in primary school, I can honestly say I really did not like mathematics at all. Every time it was math class, I'd get anxious. When the teacher walked in, I pretend to be busy, but deep down, I just did not understand anything. Sometimes I'd fool around because, to me, math felt impossible, and I thought there was no hope for me to ever get it. But everything changed when I was 12. I met a teacher who was completely different from the rest. The way he thought, the way he spoke, the way he understood his students, it made me think, wait, maybe math is not that scary after all. From then on, I started to love his class. When he offered extra lessons, I really wanted to join, but the class was already full. I was disappointed. But one day, the teacher approached me and said, "Ilham, one student just withdrew. Would you like to join my extra class?" I was shocked and honestly, I was thrilled. From that moment, I made a promise to myself. I'd work hard because I did not want to disappoint the teacher who gave me a second chance. When the UPSR exam came, I was nervous. I was really nervous. The math paper was tough and I almost cried. Oh my God, I still remember that moment. But I gave it my all. When the results were out, I got an A in maths and I'm so happy for that. I still remember how I felt. Not because I was proud of myself, but because I knew my teacher was proud too. From that day, I fell in love with mathematics. And today, I stand here as a future math teacher. That's the true power of education. When a teacher changes not just a student's grades, but their look on life, their outlook in life. That's when I learned something profound. One small act from a teacher can ignite a lifelong flame in a student. That's why I believe every teacher carries within them the power to change the world. Sometimes I wonder if that teacher had not looked my way that day, would I even be standing here today? Sometimes great change begins with the smallest act of belief. And it's not that after all the true meaning of being an educator, the true meaning of education, which is education is not just about academics. It's about shaping the mind, the heart, and the soul. If we look through history, great civilizations like Islamic, Greek, and Chinese all built their success upon education. Because education was not merely about knowing, but about becoming a useful, ethical, and thoughtful human being. In Islam, the first word revealed was Iqra. That means read. But interestingly, it did not specify what to read. That to me is the symbolize that the pursuit of knowledge has no boundaries. If our education system only teach students how to answer questions, we may produce students who can copy just a formulas. But if we teach them how to think, to question, and to understand, we will raise a generation who can create new formulas. That's the difference between memorizing to pass and learning to live. True education is when a student can say, I learn not because I'm told to, but because I want to understand the world. When our system produce students like that, that's when we know our education has succeeded. Okay. So today we live in the age of the fourth industrial revolution, heading rapidly into fifth. The world is changing every single day. In the past, it was enough to read, to write, and count. But now, students must know far more. They must think critically, communicate, collaborate, and adapt. And one report by the World Economic Forum state that 65% of children in primary school today will work in jobs that don't yet exist. So, how do we prepare them for a future we ourselves can see? The answer is through education that builds both thinking minds and human hearts. Artificial intelligence, or we call it as AI, can write essays, code programs, and analyze data, but AI cannot feel, it cannot comfort a struggling student. It cannot inspire hope. That's why the role of teachers and of education will never be replaced by technology. You guys know, technology is just a tool, but teachers are the soul. For example, I give example like countries like Finland do not have major exams like we do. We have UPSR, PT3, SPM, But the Finland have not major exams. They focus on enjoyable learning experiences, project-based learning, and the emotional well-being of students. That's why their students are not only excellent but also happy. In addition, we look a country like South Korea and Japan succeed not because they overburden students with exams, but because they understand a simple truth, which is education is not a race, but education is a journey. If we continue measuring success only by marks, we will raise students who fear failure, not those who dare to try. We don't want a generation afraid to fail. We want a generation brave enough to learn from failure. We often say that education begins at school, but in truth, it begins at home. Parents are the first teachers. The community is the second classroom. Still, the teacher's role is unique. A teacher is not just a giver of knowledge, but they are an opener of paths. I'm living proof that a teacher can ignite passion in a student's life. My teacher did not just teach me math. He taught me to believe I could learn anything if I work for it. And I'm sure many of you have a story like mine, a story of a teacher who changed your life. Has anyone here ever hated a subject before, but after meeting the right teacher, you fell in love with it? And I believe you guys have a personal story like mine. So that's the power of teaching. It's not just a job. It's a calling. It's a calling. Um, Once met a teacher who said something that stuck with me forever. When my student fail, it's not the end. It's a sign that I need to change how I teach. Imagine if every teacher taught that way, there would be no student left behind feeling stupid or dumb. Of course, we can't deny that today's education system still faces many challenges. There's exam pressure, heavy teachers' loads, and students losing motivation. Sometimes students study out of fear of failing, not out of love for learning. And teachers teach out of obligation to finish the syllabus, not out of passion. That's what we must change from a culture of learning for grades to learning for life. We need a system that celebrates creativity, not punish mistakes, because it's through mistakes that we learn to grow. Imagine if every school created safe spaces for failure, places where students could explore, experiment, and think freely. From those spaces, inventors, innovators, and future leaders will be born. That's why I believe education reform is not just about changing syllabi, it's about changing mindsets. As long as we don't change how we see students, we will never change how students see learning. So I will give hopes and the future of education. And I believe the future of education depends on three things, which is first, teachers who teach with sincerity and passion. Yes, I already told that. Second, students who are curious, not just score-driven. And the lastly is communities that supports and care. We are all part of the education ecosystem, no matter who we are. Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And I can say that I believe that's not just theory. It's proven every time a student breaks the cycle of poverty through education. Every time a teacher changes the destiny of a child, if each of us plays our role, our education system will not only produce brilliant students, but compassionate human beings who make the world better. And if today we plant the seeds of knowledge with sincerity, 10 years from now, the world will harvest its fruits in the form of people who think deeply, act kindly, and live with purpose. So, ladies and gentlemen, education transformed me from a student who once hated math into someone who now stands here as a future teacher. I learned that education is not about what we learn from books, but about who we become after learning. One teacher can change one student. One student can change one community. And one community can change the world. And perhaps a better world begins in a small classroom with a teacher who believes that every student has potential. So let's continue to support, appreciate, and renew education, not just to produce smart students, but to build good human beings. So that's all from me. Thank you.